Hello, friends. On today's episode, I'm speaking with Moly Kieland, who is a founder and coach of FuelHouse Gym based in Seattle. And Molly's also been a member of our Unicorn Society. And so I know her well, and I'm a big fan. And you'll see throughout this conversation, she's just such a thoughtful leader. She leads with such integrity and passion for her work, and it's obvious in our conversation today. We cover a few topics. We talk a little bit about COVID, and while no one likes to say that good things came out of this pandemic, there obviously, for some of us, have been some silver linings, some ways we've adjusted the business and reacted to the pandemic that have been a net positive. So Molly shares a few of those silver linings with us, including how she's restructured team meetings and change roles and responsibilities amongst her team. We talk more about her team and how to create kind of entrepreneurs in your team or intrapreneurs in your business, meaning how to get your team to think like entrepreneurs and think of new ways they can contribute and add value to the business. We also, and we end our conversation talking about retention amongst members. So Molly shares some tips and tricks about how she thinks about the culture of being a host in her gym and how that host-like culture creates some really positive and strong retention amongst her members. It's a great conversation. If all of that sounds fun to you, then stick around and keep on listening. Business for Unicorns podcast is for fitness business owners who want actionable strategies to grow their business, take amazing care of their clients, and build a life and business they truly love. I'm your host, Moly Kieland, co-founder of Mark Fisher Fitness, and through Business for Unicorns, I'm a coach and consultant to industry-leading fitness studios around the world. Let's get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. Today, I'm super excited to talk to Moly Kieland, who is the owner of FuelHouse Gym in Seattle. We've known each other for a number of years, and I just couldn't believe I hadn't had her on the podcast yet. So today, we're going to fix that. Let's welcome to the virtual stage, Moly Kieland. Hi, Molly.
Hi.
Welcome.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh, what a delight. I've really been looking forward to this because we haven't really spoken in a while. So this is both like a personal and professional reconnection for us. And I'm just so thrilled you agreed to do it. So thank you.
Oh my God, I was honored. Thank you.
So let's start with this topic because I know, many of our listeners have, shared with me that they're kind of sick of talking about COVID. And so they don't want me to spend whole podcasts on it anymore. But I still feel like we're still in it in a lot of places. The ripple effects are still going to be coming for a while. There's a lot of lessons to be learned. And I know from your story that, you, like many gym owners I've been talking to, used this COVID period of the last 2 years, really the first 18 months when many of us were shut down, as kind of a big reset for your business. You use that, certainly there were terrible things that happened during that time. But for many of us, there are also some silver linings. And so now I'm just curious, looking back on the last almost 2 years now, what have been the silver linings for you? What are the things that have happened during this kind of great COVID reset that have been good for you in the business?
It's a really cool question. And it kind of sucks to say that there have been silver linings as, a result of a pandemic, but there actually have been for us. I think the first one that stands out is just when it first truly hit us here in Seattle. And we knew we were shutting down, March 15th, 2020. Like, I'll never lose that date in my brain. The team just shifted so quickly overnight. I was just amazed by how we all came together so fast. Within 12 hours, we had figured out what the plan was going to be. So we never skipped a moment of delivering a service to our people. And out of that moment, we then decided we need to continue our communication as a team, even more so than we had maybe before. Like before pre-pandemic, we were doing a once a month staff meeting and it was in person. Not everybody could make it. We've got a lot of people now on the staff. And so as a result of getting shut down and not seeing each other all the time, we actually moved our team meeting to weekly and via Zoom to give everybody the ability to check in from the comforts of their own home if that worked better for them. So our attendance to staff meetings actually skyrocketed, 100% attendance. And we started to really just, I think, really look forward to it because we couldn't see each other as much. And then the format of our team meetings shifted as well as we started to talk more about, mental health and um, getting through such a tough time, we started to really emphasize opening up a staff meeting with gratitudes first, or what's on our mind, so we could feel safe in asking for support from one another. So that's a huge silver lining. And it's going strong still today now that we're, back in person as well. So we kept our staff meetings virtual, but also in person simultaneously.
Yeah, that's amazing, Molly. Thanks for sharing, and bravo to you. You're right. It's like no one wants to talk about good things coming out of a pandemic, but if we're being honest, there was a lot of crap, and it really was a moment for all of us to sit and pause and reflect, and really it challenged many of us to think differently. And so the three takeaways I think I heard in there, and there's probably more for our listeners, is one, it sounds like you were surprised by how quickly your team could mobilize and change what you're doing. Like it seems like many of us who were able to on March 15th, for us it was March 20th, I think, in New York. We had to overnight change what we were doing, and it sounds like that's a really great takeaway, to recognize that your team is really capable of being nimble. They're really capable of turning on a dime and switching directions, switching focus, and rallying together. And like, what a great thing to learn about yourself. That's huge. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. I love the idea of having more regular team meetings. Switching to virtual can actually increase your level of engagement. I think that's a great takeaway for our listeners. That's amazing. And I love that you talked about team meetings being more focused on like creating a safe space where we all feel like we can talk about what's going on. Right. And that's huge. This last, 2 years have had so many layers of stress or anxiety or uncertainty for people. And if you don't make space for that at work, it just kind of festers. So good for you. I mean, what have you seen in how have you seen your team evolve? I'll start over again because I can't say words today. I haven't had enough tea yet. But how have you seen your team kind of evolve now that you've changed to have more regular team meetings and you're making space for more of that dialogue? What's the impact been?
We always have had, I think, a very unique team environment. We have been family from the get-go. So my team are also my dear friends. Like we hang out. So I do blend, business and personal. So we've gotten to know each other very closely, and we've been through the ups and downs even before the pandemic. And before the pandemic, it actually became a very strong conversation amongst our community to start really talking about mental health. And so about a year and a half before the pandemic, or 2 years, we actually started an Epic Human Project, which was our annual just kind of getting our minds right, stepping into a new year. Here's an opportunity to just kind of like wipe the slate clean, but let's do this together as a community. So we've been talking about mental health for a very long time, but that definitely even became more of the forefront conversation amongst our staff, and then into the membership. It bled even more so during the pandemic. And I think the other silver lining was we opened up, we're like, well, what else can we bring to our community other than just fitness and sweating through a screen? So we started to bring in outside specialists. We actually brought in a couple mental health specialists and people to talk about different areas of life that needed attention, that we thought were also important to discuss. So another silver lining was just like getting outside of the box of just sweating. I think was good. Yeah.
Beautifully said. I think that makes so much sense because it's great to have a focus as a business and know what you're great at and know what kind of value you can offer. But in these moments where there's real change happening, where like literally the ground is shifting below our feet in our cultures and our communities and our society, you got to be responsive. And I love the fact that the way you responded was to focus more on mental health and bringing in some outside experts who can add like a new perspective, new skills to the community. Like that's fantastic. Yeah.
And to answer like back to your original question, I mean, the staff, were already leading, but that was another thing that did come out of the pandemic for us, is we really defined and designated more specific roles because we couldn't be together with it in person. So I really designated, a CSM role. We have a general manager. I also had one of our staff people kind of take over, like being our group class manager. And then one staff member took over programming for the membership. And then another staff member took over head educator. So these roles have evolved, and everyone has become their own entrepreneur within their coaching, personal training, fitness business, as well as holding a new role at FuelHouse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah, I want to dive more into that idea of, empowering your staff to be their own entrepreneur. Let me just circle back to the previous topic real quickly. I want to say just, if one of our listeners loves the idea of making more space for conversation about mental health for their team or for their community, what tips or suggestions you have for where they start? You've been doing this for a little while now. Where does someone start if they want to make more space for their team or for their clients in that conversation?
That's a really great question. I, the first thing that comes to mind is it has to come from you yourself first, and
Mm,
be comfortable exposing you and
yeah.
all of you. Let yourself, open up like an onion to your team, and show them your vulnerability is very important. We're all human, and reminding them that you are, human. You're going to make mistakes, but you might have these internal struggles and battles that are actually, it feels good to release that to a group that makes you feel safe. So I think it's, putting the mirror in front of you first as a leader, and then showing your team, this is who I am, and asking for help, and reminding them that, I hired them for a reason. I hired them because I tell them they're better than me in everything that they do. So of course I want to be standing next to them as my teammates. Um, so exposing yourself first, I think, is the most important. Then just continuing to provide that really safe environment, and then, one-on-one, 30-minute just check-ins with each individual staff monthly or every other month. I think really creates then that safe environment for it to happen between owner and teammate, and then it has just bled into staff meetings as a whole.
Yeah, beautifully said. I think that's a great way to think about it, and I love that you started with like, "Hey, leaders, it starts with you," right?
Mhm.
Lead with vulnerability yourself. Show
Yeah.
people that you are human. Peel back the layers of the onion, expose parts of yourself you haven't, and that kind of vulnerability breeds other vulnerability, right? It makes it clear that this is a the phrase that people use a lot these days is this is like psychologically safe space, right?
Mhm.
Where it is safe enough for you to expose yourself and not run the risk of something bad happening, right? And so I think that that psychological safety has to be based on the foundation of trust. So
Mhm.
being having a team or a community at your gym that knows that trust is like a core value,
Yeah.
I think is going to be really important there. So you leading with that and showing what it looks like, I think is such a beautiful example of where to start. So yeah, thanks for that, Molly.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
bet. It's hard
Yeah.
not to be that way. I'm an open book, so they've
Yeah.
seen they've
I
seen all
imagine
sides.
I think it's a great point because I imagine for some of our listeners, like it comes very easily, right? That people are like you, they're like, I'm frankly that way as well. It's like, what do you want to talk about? I'll talk about anything. I'll peel back whatever
Anything.
layers you want to see. And
Yeah,
for other listeners, I'm sure that sounds terrifying.
yeah, exactly.
Like, what do you mean I have to go first? I mean, I have to talk about my feelings and my thoughts, my
Mhm.
anxieties. And I think what Molly and I are suggesting is yes, go
Yes,
slowly, right? Don't do anything that feels terribly unsafe to you, but take one
yeah.
step at a time and
Just
people will
maybe
come along with you.
pour some liquid courage and just be
Yeah,
vulnerable.
yeah, exactly,
Mhm.
exactly. Amazing. Okay, so going back to the idea you were talking about before, we're topic hopping, is the idea was that you were saying that you're trying to empower your team to kind of have an entrepreneurial mindset, or maybe
Mhm.
I think I've heard some people refer to this as kind of intrapreneurial mindset, right?
Entrepreneurial.
That in the gym they're taking on new roles and having new responsibilities that push the business forward. So just talk to me more about how that works.
I think originally when we started saying the word entrepreneurial, it definitely was a word that, through business with unicorns, I definitely was something that we discussed as a group when I was working with you guys. And then Chris Cooper, Two Brain Business, it comes from that atmosphere as well. Um, and for us, it just started with really bringing them in for a meeting, each individual staff member, and talking about, and we try to do it at the beginning of every year or right before the next year is going to start, and sit down and kind of look at, if in the perfect world, what would that look like for you?
Mm.
First of all, what would you like to make? What kind of income do you need to make to live the life that you want to live right now, or what you would like to live? And okay, that's great. Well, here's what we're making right now individually for group classes. Here's what you make for coaching. Have you ever thought about leading a specialty group? Because that's really where, the money is for a coach with us. And so this kind of discovery session is where it begins with us, to kind of like work from, backwards, basically, and then fill in the blanks of, here's where they are really, an expert in what they deliver. Here's an area of opportunity of, oh man, I'm interested in maybe providing this level of service to the gym, but I don't quite have this certification. Here are the steps that it's going to take to get there. So we walk through a whole fact-finding hour, and then a plan we map out then for them. It's a career roadmap for them on how that year could look if we coach this many classes, knowing we make this, if we private train, one-on-one, group train, and then if we're going to lead any kind of specialty program, and then on top of that, what else do you want to do? Clinics. And then we start there. And then with them, the discussion is like, for them, I'll do everything in my power to be their marketing manager. Like, I will do all the marketing for them as long as they are providing me the details behind the services that they want to offer. And then I go to work with them and for them. And it turns out to be just like this awesome relationship of this balance of wanting to grow them in their own business underneath the FuelHouse umbrella, and working as a team to help them get to where they want to go.
Yeah. Amazing. Can you give me some examples of like the kinds of things your team is? So you mentioned kind of specialty sessions and things like that. So what are the kinds of things they're doing that add value to the business?
I'm sure it's a similar concept to Get Snatched, which is just a brilliant program that MFF leads. So I'm sure that's where it originated for me. Just this like, okay, MFF does that really well and they do it often. How can I try to incorporate something similar into FuelHouse? And so for us, it started with strong camps. That's what we call them. Mm-hmm. And the strong camp, for example, looks different for every coach. So for example, I'll sit down with Coach Sokol, and he's got maybe 4 different styles of specialty groups. These are 8, 10, or 12-week groups that he wants to lead on a seasonal basis. So for example, in the summer, we did Simple and Sinister as an 8-week camp. And for that, we promoted it to allow people to be on site to train in their small group, but we also allowed a virtual component too for people that were remote and lived far away. And with the coach, we just set what the basic rate needs to be, what he needs to make in that time period, per hour that he's coaching, how many hours a week, what does that look like? How many then people do we need to get to sign up from both ends? And then it goes from there. We usually promote at least 5 weeks in advance of a strong camp happening. Another strong camp that he leads in the winter is like a barbell camp. And then other coaches lead an online camp. So we've got another coach that's leading like a preparation for your first marathon camp in the new year. So
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fantastic examples, right? That just, it seems like it gives the opportunity for everyone on your team to kind of follow their personal interests and passions. And I love that you've created this kind of frame for them to say, hey, we're going to do this in the style of kind of camps or boot camps or whatever you want to phrase it as. And then in this framework, you can offer whatever you want.
Yeah.
So I think that makes a ton of sense. Has anyone ever brought you ideas that you're like, no, that's not something we're going to offer? Or let's start with that question. I have more questions. Let's start with that. Has anyone ever brought you anything you're like, we're not doing that?
Not necessarily in them wanting to lead a specialty group, but it's, I think my first thought is I've made some mistakes of wanting to do too much and trying to be too much outside of what we're really, really good at. And sure. I would say, so then separately as a business owner, I've learned we're just not a boxing gym. I don't need to spend the money to set us up for a boxing gym when a really awesome one is down the road. So let's have a partnership with them instead send the boxing people to them or however that needs to look. So as far as like just ideas that I'm like, I don't think so. Not yet.
Wow, good for you. No, it's great. And I think this is the balance I think many of us are looking for, right? Which is we want to support our team and have them express their interests and their skills and their expertise in a way that adds value to our community. And we don't want to try and be doing too much. We don't want to be too many
Yeah.
things to too many people, especially if it requires extra investment of rearranging our space or buying new equipment and all those things. It can become difficult.
Oh,
Yeah. So,
actually, I do have one. One came up. Um, we have a friend that was going to potentially come and work for us, and they really wanted us to get more acrobatic style contraptions because we have really high ceilings now in our new space. So like trapeze and stuff like that. I'm like,
yeah.
that's a hard no. Yeah.
Yeah, and we all have our boundaries.
Yeah, we're not going to do a circus here. No, we
Yeah.
already are a circus in our own way.
Yeah. So kind of practically speaking, like just from a money perspective. So how does this how do these kind of specialties work? You just negotiate a split with your team to kind of
Yes,
to divide up the revenue. Is that the basics?
it is. Yeah. So I work off the 4/9 model. So for actually a coach that wants to run a small group, we do a 5/9 model.
Got it.
Because I feel that they're putting in a lot more work for the development behind and design of that program. And so then the 5/9 model is what is our agreement when they want to lead a specialty group. And then, our price point typically ends up running between $37 and $42 per person per hour that they're showing up for their strong camp time. And we'll take up to about 8 people maybe per camp.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. That makes
Sound
sense. Do you
familiar?
want to just say?
Know.
No, that's great. Do you want to say because I think the 4/9 model did Two Brain start that? Is that their?
I
I know
don't.
they've popularized it. Do you just want to say roughly what that is for listeners who might not have heard of it yet?
So even for example, I have it actually pulled up on my drive. So if you take it and actually do the math, for example, say a participant is going to pay $200 to register for a program at however length, right? Divide that by 9, multiply it by 5, and the coach gets then that percentage of the registration that the participant pays. The gym takes the rest. That's going to cover the fixed costs that the gym needs to cover, and then all the marketing that goes into place and the time behind the scenes of setting up a successful program. So, and it works just beautifully. It's a wonderful opportunity for the coach to maximize their time and their earning potential. It's so great. I love it for them.
Yeah. Yeah, good for you. Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense. When you can find a model like that helps there be consistency across all these different programs, helps make your life so much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think tell me if this is wrong, but my memory of the 4/9 model was that the gross revenue gets split into kind of 9 parts. I think 2 parts are fixed cost, 3 are profit, and 4 should be coaching staff. Is that right?
Got it. You got it.
Right? A number of ninths.
That's about it. Yeah, that's it. And I'll double check when we're done. But
I'll double check and edit this podcast accordingly.
Yeah, right.
But I think that's useful. So you're basically applying a similar model to how you pay people for.
Yeah. Back
Specialty
to an
camps.
original question, Michael, that you did ask me, like another silver lining, the opportunity of being shut down. We actually had to move at the same time into our new facility. Double the size, double the expenses, and double the risk and fear, right?
Yeah.
But I also saw it as an opportunity for us to look at our old location. What did we get stuck doing that was hard to pull ourselves out of? So for example, we had a pretty packed group class schedule that wasn't necessary. There were some classes that just didn't need to be there because they weren't the prime time. But the problem was they blocked out the opportunity for coaches to lead specialty groups during those times because the group class was taking over the floor. So I knew going into our new location that I really wanted to start things slowly. So that was another opportunity with the pandemic of us having to be shut down and re-enter very slowly and not offer this full schedule of group classes right off the go again. Do it right the first time, like slowly add things in and find the perfect spots to allow for primetime classes to happen, and then not overbook the floor with those. So to allow for the coaches to have this opportunity to lead more groups
Great.
of their own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah. Amazing. I want to switch gears. Let me just go back before I do that and see if I can kind of recap some highlights for our listeners that I remember from this part of our conversation. One was that if you want to really invest in your team as entrepreneurs, you were suggesting starting with, a kind of a career planning session. An hour you sit down, talk about how much money you want to make, what are your goals, what are your interests. And your specific model then leads them to this kind of framework of, cool, well, you can create a specialty camp, right? Here's how you get paid for it. I'll do the marketing for it. You've even said in this last bit, this is how it fits into the schedule now. We can slowly introduce it over time. And this allows them to express their interests and explore their needs by adding value to the company in unique ways. I think that those are fantastic takeaways for our listeners. That if you want to invest more in your team and you have space in the business to allow them to try some new things, bring in some new revenue streams, then that seems like a great model for doing it. Anything I missed?
No, you hit it, nailed it. And the neat thing is what comes out of those career roadmap sessions, you'll learn a lot about your staff, and some new stuff comes up, and it's just like, you want to do what? Oh, okay, let's do it. It's cool. Yeah. And fantastic. It also goes to you as an owner, which has been tough for me. I think the hardest part has been delegation, and giving time to delegate and taking the time to train up someone that is probably going to be better at running an area of the business than me. So those career roadmaps are awesome discovery sessions.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks, Molly. Cool. So I think we have time for one more topic before we start to wrap it up here. And I want to talk a little bit more about your members and your community, because I know every time we've connected, I always remember this sense of like pride and excitement and joy on your face when you get to talk about your community and your members. It's so memorable. And I want to talk a little bit about how you keep people around, because I know, one of the things you like focusing on is retention for membership. And so I just want to hear a little bit about, how do you think about it? What's your approach to membership retention to keep people around for a long time?
You brought tears to my eyes. And the reason for that is I think of just the support that we got from our membership through this whole very hard time for everyone in 2 years. But as far as like my approach to our community is kind of how I approach my team. We're family. We're going to try to get to know you beyond just delivering an hour of sweat to you when you show up to FuelHouse. I want people to feel heard, and I think we've done a really good job at making sure that people feel cared for and heard. We have such a different variety of ages, colors, sizes, shapes, you name it. So it's wonderful to have the respect too, I think, from me, and it shows up through my staff of, we respect so many different types of humans, and it's really important to show that amongst the team and then extending out into the community. I'd say the feeling that I like to deliver is, and this actually comes from an old training from the facility I kind of started my fitness journey in. The founder, his philosophy was, this is my gym, but it's my home. And I'm the host of my house party.
Yep.
And how do I want to make all my guests feel showing up to my house party? And I want them to feel like immediately welcomed, like this is a safe place. There is no ego. And all I want is for you to feel better walking out than when you first walked in, but you kind of want to stay for more. And so that whole house party mentality is how I've spoken with the team about the culture and the atmosphere that I want us to provide when we're leading our group classes, when we're leading our private sessions. how it should feel for someone when they're first walking through our door. Even
Hmm.
if you're in a one-on-one session, someone walks through, yell their name, immediately recognize, hey, how's it going? And just show that welcoming environment.
Yeah, that's fantastic, Molly. I mean, it's a great analogy, right? The idea of this that our business is a home and we're the hosts and it's a house party every day.
Yeah,
And our job is to make them feel welcomed and expected and comfortable until we make them work their butts off, sweat
right.
really hard. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's fantastic. I think it's also just great because your team knows what that's like. Like
Mhm.
people understand what it's like to host a party at your house. The amount
Totally.
of prep that it takes, the amount of work it takes once they're there.
Mhm.
And hosting is not the same as going to a party, right? It
Yeah,
takes a special
exactly.
kind of focus on the experience. So I'm curious, what does that wind up looking like practically in your space? So when you're sitting in the gym and you're looking out across your team performing and being good hosts, what are the behaviors you're seeing? You mentioned one already, which is like using people's names is an example of a really great host-like behavior that creates a
Yes.
good experience. What other behaviors do you hope to see on your team when they're doing this well?
We talk about this in staff meetings and then also in our monthly coaching education hour. The importance of contact and communication, obviously, maybe not physical contact, but
Hmm.
touch points. So when you're hosting a group class of 16, your goal is to make contact with each individual at least 3 times in that hour. And whether
Hmm.
that's a hello or going over and kind of giving them the compliment sandwich, cue, to just like awesome work on that deadlift, like that, and giving them just quick, like, well done. So that's what it looks like on the floor. And then constant movement, like the coach not standing at the front the whole time, bobbing and weaving in between people. Another great thing is showing introductions. So we
Hmm.
really try to emphasize to have our coaches introduce the newbies that have shown up maybe for the first time. And maybe we catch them off guard, but it immediately is this like icebreaker of, hey everyone, this is Ian's first class. He just graduated from foundations. Please welcome him in this hour, especially if it's a team-based kind of workout. We really emphasize that. And I think another silver lining of the pandemic was we formed a fund committee amongst our membership. And a
Hmm.
lot of those fund committee members were ambassadors, like original OG members of FuelHouse, who have just taken on this responsibility of, I'm an ambassador here. Therefore, if I'm in a class and I don't know you, I'm going to go out of my way to say hello, welcome you, and make sure that you feel welcome.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Those are great tips. Listeners, I hope you are jotting that down because I think it really helps this host analogy come alive, right? Because it's the same thing you do at a party, right? At a party, you're going to try and have multiple touch points with people, which means you mingle at a party, right? When you're the host, you don't sit in one place. You travel around and make sure you have some face time with everyone. And your standard was at least 3 touch points in a session, which is great. And the second thing you do is you're going to introduce people to each other. If you're at a party where everyone doesn't know each other, you can say, hey, do you know my friend from college? Do you know my aunt? Do you know,
Yeah,
right? I'm thinking of all the holiday parties we have
right.
coming up, right?
Totally.
And that kind of mingling is like so crucial. So I love that analogy. And the last one, the idea of having some sort of fun committee, or the analogy I think of there when it comes to like hosting a party is this kind of like, um, the core party people who you want help planning parties with because they know
Mhm.
everyone, they know how to have a good time, they've
Yeah.
been around forever.
Yeah.
That's the committee of people you want at your business chiming
Definitely.
in. They've been around, they know the vibe, they know what's fun for people, they know what
Yeah.
you've already done in the past. And so, like, that's a great idea to have just kind of a committee of people who are like, how do we have more fun together? Like,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
brilliant.
One of our coaches too, he's so good at remembering to ask a fun question of the day. So that's another great icebreaker too.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, we could keep talking about this forever because hosting and hospitality is like one of my favorite topics. So we'll have to have you back again. We can talk more about it. But
Okay.
But I want to start wrapping things up here, and I want to leave time here for our final 5 questions. So
Okay.
these are 5 questions. They're just about you. There's no prep needed. We kind of treat it kind of rapid fire, but also you can take your time if you want. And so
Okay.
let's dive in. Let's dive in. So question number one, Molly, is what is just one thing you love about being a gym owner?
I'm immediately surrounded by a large family that I don't have personally in my life. I have family, but we're very small. So that was a big reason why I started Fuel House.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's an extended family, a chosen family, a community that feels supportive. Yeah, beautiful. Question number two. This is about your clients. We kind of were just talking about this, but I'm curious if you can think of a specific example. Tell me about a time when you did something really cool for a client. We always talk about over delivering, creating some memorable kind of moment for clients. So, what's one of the kind of coolest or most memorable things you've done to really deliver for a client?
Actually, several of them happened for us when the pandemic started. A blend of our members pooling together a sponsorship fund to sponsor the members that had lost their jobs.
Mm,
So we then were able to carry them for a long time. And that has actually bled over for me with a couple individuals currently that have struggled and have lost their job. So that's the first thing that comes to mind is I don't want your fitness to stop. We'll find a way. I know you're going to find a job eventually. So you've supported us. Let us support you now.
yeah, fantastic. I love that example. Amazing. So, question number three is this is about your team again. So, when someone on your team does this thing, it makes you super happy. So, how does the team, when you watch them do this behavior or this thing, it just lights you up with happiness?
I mean, when I see a team member support another team member and not need anyone else in that conversation is just epic. And I guess
Hmm.
the example would just be we communicate through Slack as a team. So when we need someone to sub for us for a class or a client or whatever, that's where we ask for that support. And just seeing that communication between the team, and I'm completely removed. And then separately, when an executive decision is made and they don't even include me, I'm like, that is awesome.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Great. So when they
yeah,
take ownership of helping and supporting one another and they don't really even need you, it's
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah,
yeah.
great. Cool. Question number four. This one's a little tactical. This one's about getting new people in the door. So, what is your most reliable strategy for generating leads? So if you need some new leads tomorrow, where's the first place you turn?
Well, we definitely turn to the membership first and
Mhm.
ask them for referrals, and then give them access to bringing in anyone that comes to mind that they think could benefit from what we offer here at Fuel House for free. Social media is another great place for us to just get the word out quickly. And I don't pay for any marketing ever. So it's really grassroots in those couple things I just mentioned.
Yeah. So wait, you're turning to referrals first, then you turn on social media. When you turn on social media, is there anything in particular you do that will actively get in leads?
A lot of it is promoting our onboarding program. So we have an onboarding program before you become a member or a personal training client. And I think the storyline that goes around that, how we speak about it and what the experience would look like for that individual. And then also testimonials really help.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Last question here, and this is your chance to speak to all the gym owners listening and give them some advice here. What is one thing gym owners can start doing better tomorrow? So if you'd like to, look out into the world and see all the gym owners who are watching this, and there's one thing you just wish they would all do tomorrow differently, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I know it's tough. And
That
that's
is
why, that's
that
why
is
it's last.
that is such a hard one. I think ultimately it depends on what your goal is as the owner with your business.
Hmm.
I know many owners, the goal would be to be able to remove themselves so that the gym is fully functioning on its own with this epic staff.
Hmm.
So the most important thing is establishing, building trust within your staff and really working on their growth. So the
Great.
career roadmaps is an awesome start, and delegating specific roles and responsibilities and recognizing the talents within your staff that, you can't do it all and you're not going to do it all well. So let them take that over and help them grow in that role for sure. And then the second one, if you don't know your numbers well or math, if you don't math, hire the person or bring on board someone that's going to help you, run a successful P&L. And so my husband just stepped into the COO, CFO role for us. God bless, because that is not my strong area.
Yeah, those are fantastic ones, Molly. I love that. So invest and develop your team, do some career roadmaps, especially if your goal is to kind of be out of the operations as an owner, then that's going to be crucial to building that trust and building a deep bench of really successful team members. And the second one is know your damn numbers. And if you don't want to know them, hire someone who will know them.
Yeah.
or marry well.
Yes, exactly.
I love it. Well, you crushed it. That was the final 5 questions, and those were fantastic answers. So to wrap things up, how can our listeners find more about you, find you and FuelHouse online? Where can they go?
Yeah, FuelHouseGym.com, at FuelHouse Gym on Instagram. We do a lot on our Instagram. That's kind of one of our favorite places to be crazy. And then separately, at Coach Moly K on Instagram is my side health coaching business, but I actually run the nutrition program here at the gym. So that's where you can find us.
Fantastic. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes on our website, businessunicorns.com/podcast. And I just want to say thank you, Moly. Thanks for being here. If all of you listeners enjoy this conversation, comment below, share it, go share it with friends who you know will benefit from today's conversation. You're a true delight, Moly, and I'm so glad we had this chance to catch up.
Thank you. And thank you for all that you and Mark do. You guys have inspired me from the get-go. So I just honor you both and respect what you've done.
Oh, well, thank you so much. The feeling is mutual. So let's do this again sometime.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye. Hey friends, before you go, just one more thing. If you enjoy this podcast, you get value out of it, you enjoy listening, please share this podcast, comment below. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Please share it with friends and family. We don't spend any money on marketing or advertising. And so the only way people find out about this podcast is from you. So please do everything you can to share it with friends and fellow colleagues in the fitness industry. We love making it and we want to keep doing it for a long, long time. So I appreciate your support. Go have a kick-ass day. Bye.